All right, everyone, welcome back to YouTube. We are looking into men and being triggered. This is something that has come up a lot recently. I mean, I see this in my own life, especially a lot more in the past before I started on, my own development and really questioning when I would get triggered. But I see it a lot today too, because sometimes I'll post some things that challenge men and they get highly triggered and they get very defensive, and you see it in their comments. And so I think it's one of the things that we really need to address, because that triggering within men is what's causing a deterioration of what men look like to the world. And then not only that, it also is causing a deterioration in the connectivity of men and the evolution of masculinity. Part of the triggering is because we hear what we want to hear. And this is one of the things I wanted to address real briefly, but it's something we need to listen to and look into as well. And I saw this with other people and their posts, especially during like COVID. So a friend of mine did a test on this, which was brilliant, but also shows that people don't necessarily see what is really being written or hear what is really being said, that they have a certain perspective and see the words how they want to see them and listen to the words and how they want to listen to them. So all of a sudden, they'll start attacking you for something they believe you said or something they believe they saw, and that actually never came out of your mouth or was never actually written in the statement. So it's very funny and interesting all at the same time, the way that our brains work and the way that we see things. It's just a testament to changing our perception gives us the ability to really evolve and see things objectively, right? So that's one of the things. But when we talk about triggers, and triggers typically are coming from the ego. And that is because the fact that the trigger is protecting an insecurity. So I want to take us back to a second to, one of the posts that I did recently. It was a reel and got a lot of great support from men who I actually respect and are in the men's field, and then got a bunch of negative support from people who don't really understand masculinity and are not in the men's space at all. But what they didn't realize was that what they were saying was not actually directly correlated to a response into what I was actually talking about. So the reason why was because they failed to listen to the words and they failed to actually understand what I was saying. So when that came out, they got triggered. It challenged their ego. It challenged an insecurity. Their ego came out to protect, and then they looked like asshats to everybody else. But that's because of the fact that they just were not paying attention. And this is something that I feel is very important for all of us as human beings, but a lot for us as men, especially because of the fact that we are looked at as leaders, right? It's just something that's part of society, has been there since the start of everything, of civilization. And we are still looked at in that way. Doesn't mean women aren't leaders, doesn't mean they're not great leaders, doesn't mean that they can't be leaders. It just means that men are still, because we are evolving as a society, are still inherently looked at as leaders. So when you're a leader and you're popping off at the mouth saying dumb shit, and then you're also popping off and not actually responding to the real information that's being written or said, then you look like a dumbass. And then that just embarrasses you to the people you're trying to impress with your quote unquote cool comments. So just remember that, guys. The triggering stuff, man, that is part of it. We're not listening. We're not reading correctly. We're reading and listening from a perspective. And then the other thing is what I just mentioned, your insecurities being protected. So that, moving to this next piece, is that when that insecurity gets tapped, right? Again, we'll go back to this reel. I'm going to use this as an example because it's a great real-time example. It's a great way to see society and how men are responding to stuff. And the reason why they were triggered was because the fact that what I was talking about was challenging their masculinity, or version of the masculinity that they found themselves comfortable in and powerful in, right? So in that, instead of actually objectively listening to it and understanding what I was saying, they took it as an offense to who they were, or the man that they built themselves to be, or feel like they built themselves to be. And we won't go into that long conversation, but really most of the men today have not built the man that they are intentionally. They've subscribed to a subconscious understanding of masculinity that was laid out for them. Whole nother conversation. But in this effort of the fact that they were feeling like I was attacking them, they got triggered, and inappropriately got triggered, because the fact that their insecurity was they were being attacked or their version of masculinity was being attacked. It's to say that when that arises, when you're being triggered, you should start questioning the trigger first and foremost before you respond. Because when you respond from an emotional state, you're not responding from cognitive clarity. You're responding from a state where you're actually clouded and in a sympathetic nervous state, which is fight or flight state. You're responding in that type of atmosphere, that type of system, because of the fact that you're feeling triggered and threatened. So you go to a sympathetic nervous state, right? Never is this going to pan out to be your when it comes verbally, right? It's not going to pan out to be a benefit to you, really. You should always be looking at the trigger and evaluating it first and foremost before you respond to the person or the thing that you feel like needs to be addressed. So just remember, if that comes up, if that's you and you found yourself, you've done this in the past, I have. I'm not saying that I haven't. I have, and I've made dumbass statements, and I've then had to go relook at my statements like, oh shit, like that's kind of fucked. Like I didn't really listen to what the guy was saying, or I didn't really read what the person was writing, and I kind of responded emotionally instead of looking at it, evaluating it, and coming from a cognitive awareness place. So I've had those moments as well. And this is just to shed light on the fact that it is something that I see in a lot more men than I do women. And in that sense, guys do actually tap more into this emotion of anger much quicker and much more because of the fact that they are finding themselves in those levels of insecurity or emasculation. So they feel they have to go quick to the defense, right? So just remember, challenge the trigger. All right. The next piece to this is what I kind of already alluded to, but it's think, analyze, investigate, and introspect, right? That's what we need to do. To think about what's being said, analyze what's really being said, then go ahead and investigate what's really being said. If you have the time, right? I would highly recommend investigate what's being said. And also, this is a two-pronged thing. Investigate why you're feeling the way you're feeling. If it is being triggered, investigate that internally. If you can't investigate what's being said because it's more of a conversation, right? You don't have time to go investigate it and then figure out, okay, what's this person saying? Is it real? Is there contention here? What is it? At least investigate the way you're feeling before you respond, and then have introspection of the type of response you want to have, and also introspection of feeling the way that you feel. Right? You got to dive into these pieces. And it might sound like, well, Johnny, how do I get into a real conversation, real-time conversation with somebody if I'm putting all this? Trust me, the more you practice it, the more it's going to become second nature. I can dive into a thought. Like there's nothing better in a conversation than somebody sitting there and actually thinking about something you said first before we're providing a response. I have numerous friends that do this, and I admire it so much because it tells me, one, they're actually checking into their database and saying, okay, here's what Johnny said. Is it true? Is it not true? Do I believe it? Do I not believe it? Do I have facts that counter this? Do I have experiences that may counter this? Do I have a question about this? Like they're going through a protocol before they respond. And in that, I'm getting a better response, number one. And number two, we're getting a better communication going on between us, a better conversation going on between us. And that to me is what's powerful about it. So when you go ahead and analyze, you think about it, and then you analyze what's being said, these things allow you to tap into your database to be like, okay, let me actually move this conversation forward so we gain something from it, right? And instead of just going on quick attack. So that's a technique that you guys can use, is think about what's being said, analyze it. Hey, what are my beliefs? What's maybe a counter I have for this, or what's something I want to explore with him about this or her about this? Then the next piece is that investigation. Dive into that, like investigate yourself or investigate the information if you have the opportunity to, especially for all you people writing back on like Instagram or writing back on Facebook or whatever social media platform it is. If you got the time to investigate the information, do that and realize what's being said, or give some due diligence to the investigative piece. And then also introspect yourself and introspect the feelings. I can't tell you how important all this stuff is. It will become second nature. You just have to continue to work on it and practice it regularly. Okay, act according to the information you gather from your investigation, right? So if your investigation tells you that, hey, I'm being triggered, and all of a sudden I feel really heightened levels of emotions, I'm starting to feel cortisol, I'm starting to feel anxiety, I'm starting to feel tension, I'm starting to feel, if I'm investigating myself and I'm starting to feel those things, I should act according to that. And according to that means I shouldn't say a goddamn word, because I need to dive into what's going on first and why I'm feeling that way. Now, whether it's because the fact that a foundational piece of who I am is being questioned or challenged is fine, or whether it's the fact that I have an experience that has come up because of this conversation and that's causing me to have some form of anxiety or some form of tension, right? Whatever the investigation results in internally, you should be acting according to that. And the same thing goes if you have the ability to investigate the information, so you have the ability to go research it. Act according to that research. Don't act in a way that's going to simply allow you to react emotionally and cause distress, and also allow you to look dumber than you probably are. That's the other thing, because a lot of times when someone is putting something out that's controversial, I would say, I can't say it's like 100% of the time. I would like to believe, because the people that I follow, when they put out something that may be a little bit controversial, they tend to have a lot of research behind it. And in that case, if I'm going to respond to it in a way that is actually accurate and models the behavior in which a man that I want to be in this world acts, I should probably get some form of research and education behind my response. So allow yourself to be way more critical of what it is that you want to say and what it is how you want to respond through your investigation of both sides, and allow that to dictate the response that you're going to have, not the emotional response. And then the last thing I have for this is, when you find yourself being triggered, when you find yourself feeling, that anger come up and you have to just respond really quickly because you think it's ridiculous and whatever, lean into the trigger first. Lean into it by saying, whoa, where is this coming from? What is it in me? And why is this coming up? Because when you can dive into that trigger, you're going to do what we all should be doing, which is evolving and progressing in who we are. And that is going to allow you to actually have a real conversation internally about what's going on, and potentially prevent you from having that much anger and anxiety and tension in your own life, because you're addressing a trigger. You're addressing something that's probably deeply rooted within you for certain reasons. And if you can go back and uncoil that and allow that to be resolved, that may no longer be a trigger for you. And then you're like, cool, the next time somebody says something in that same vein, you don't have to get triggered. Who gives a shit? Because it doesn't hurt you. It doesn't affect you anymore. So just allowing yourself to absorb that information and then lean into the trigger that's coming up. It's okay if you are triggered. Fuck, we all have them. It's not a problem. But what is a problem is when we allow that to cause us to respond in a way that isn't aligned with us. Because most people, what happens is they'll either go back and reread their stuff and realize they were completely out of line or sound really stupid. And either they'll be like, wow, I'm very embarrassed. And then they'll resort to a vice or figure out a way to forget about it. Or they'll look at it and then they'll never look at it and they won't care. And it still allows them to look like an idiot to most people reading, because they're going to be like, wow, this guy's obviously angry. And also the fact that what he's saying isn't even responding to the information that's being passed. So he's irrelevant, right? And so either way, you're missing the mark. You're allowing yourself to just literally respond to anger. That is it. And not allow yourself to actually do the growth that should come along with that, which is diving into whatever the trigger was that caused you to respond that way. All right, guys. I hope you like this. The triggered man is a very easy guy to find in today's society. You see him everywhere. Majority of men, potentially even a lot of you guys watching this, are reacting that way. And this is just a call to you to start evaluating that objectively and allow yourself to grow. I was that guy before. I still have moments of it. I just have the tools now to actually question myself, and that's what it's really about. Before something comes out, before I act a fool, I end up questioning myself first and allow myself to respond in that way, which then allows me to not have shame, guilt, and regret about the way I behaved or the things I said because of the fact that I'm reacting in a way that's in alignment with me. So just allow yourselves to explore that conversation if you find yourself being triggered. Explore these tools and allow yourself to simply grow. You're not going to win every time. You're going to still have triggers, even if you practice this on a regular basis. But start to harness these tools so you can go ahead and improve your life. All right, everybody. I'll see y'all next time.